Hey, this is Anne bringing you a Unreal Engine 4 tutorial. So in this tutorial series I'll be showing you how to create the Boo character from the Mario games. So if I hit play, I'll just quickly demonstrate that. So as you can see, if you look at him he'll hide, but then he'll taunt on occasion. If you turn your back on him, Boo, he'll follow. So if you look at him, he'll hide, taunt, and then if you keep moving, he'll hide again. But if you manage to get outside of range, he'll stop chasing you as well. So without further ado, we'll go into part 1 now. So for this tutorial I've created a project that I've uploaded to GitHub. This will contain all of the Sprite assets, including the actor that we'll be using as the Boo character. And if you go to the link, which will be in the description below, it'll take you to this page. Go to the code drop down here, click download zip, and this will give you the base project that I'll be using, which is under engine version 4.26. If I go into the project, as you can see here, there is a texture sheet that I've extracted sprites from and created flipbooks. And then if you go into the blueprints folder, there's an actor here which is just called Boo for the character. If you double click to open that, and inside you will find an animation state machine, basically with different states that I've set up with flipbooks. So idle, pursuing, hiding and taunting. So the next part we'll start to code this, and so we can get it to move around. Now that we've got the assets, it's time to start coding the Boo character here. So if you haven't got the project open, or you haven't got the Boo actor open, double click to open. And then what we're going to do is first off we're going to make the logic that moves the character, and we're going to be using event tick, using delta time as well. So first thing we need is 3 variables. So we need a target, we need to check that they're in range, and we need to check that they're facing away, as the Boo character should only move towards the player if the player is facing away from them. So if you go into variables, the first one is a boolean, and we're going to call that player in range. Next one we're going to add is we're going to see if player facing away. And then the last variable we want is we want to have an actor which will be the target. So we want an actor object reference, and I'm just going to call that target player. Hit compile, and that's the 3 variables that we need. So I'm going to drag in player in range, is player facing away, drag at the top one and type in and, connect those 2 up, and then from here we want to branch. So is the player in range and are they facing away? Also, before we go into that as well, we might also do a valid check. So drag in target player, is there a valid player reference set? And for the target player, we're going to make that instance editable so that we can select the character in the world with the eyedropper tool, and we can connect all that up. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is we need to drag in our target player, and we need to get our actor location, and then we need to get our current actor location for the Boo actor. Now what this will do is, if we subtract these 2 vectors, that will give you a direction pointing towards where the player character is. So rather than using the plus tool here, we'll promote this to a variable, and we're going to call this player direction. Connect true to that, and using up a little bit too much space, so we'll drag that up here and we'll push it over a bit more, give us a bit more breathing room. Now that I have player direction, what I want to do is I want to normalize that so that we can multiply it by a speed vector or a speed float. So type in normalize, promote that to a variable, and next thing we need to do is we need to create a new variable called the desired velocity. So basically the vector to move us towards where the player is if we're the boot character. Connect that to that, compile, save. So next part, well, we now know the direction of the player and we now have something normalized so that we can use speed to move it slowly towards a set rate. So the next thing we need is we need to multiply that by a float. So drag in desired velocity, multiply it by float, and then from this multiply float we want float and float. And then what we can do is, doesn't matter what order, it'll do the same thing. Promote this to a variable. I'm going to call this movement speed. Hit compile, and just for now we'll set that to 200. So what I want to do is I want to move this at a steady rate of 200 without frame rate affecting it. So what we do is we go all the way back here, grab the delta seconds, plug it into that, and now this will move the consistent speed regardless of what the frame rate is. Hold Alt, drag in desired velocity, connect that, and now we have a velocity modified by speed. So for the last part, what we need to do is we need to get the set actor location, and all we're doing is we're adding the desired velocity to the current actor location to move it towards it. Connect that to that, connect that to that, and set that into set actor location. So we'll give that a quick test now. Obviously it won't update the animation just yet, but we need to set that. So let's just set these now to true as default, so it will pass this bool check. And if we go into the main level, we'll just pick the actor from the scene and we'll quickly hit play to see if the character moves towards it. And sure enough, the boot character is seeking towards the player. So we know that the movement logic works. So quickly we need to just, before we continue, let's just set these two booleans to false by default, because really they should not be true straight away. They should be set as conditionals whenever those particular conditions are met. So we've added in the movement logic in to move this character towards the play, and as for the last part we're just going to change the event begin place, and so that we can continue on to the next part, because this video is getting a little bit too longer than I'd intended. So if we go up to the event begin section here, drag off event begin play, add in a sequence, and then from event 1 we're going to add a timer by event. We're going to set that to 0.5 seconds. We're going to have it looping, and this will be the event which basically tries to detect the player, whether they're in range and whether they're facing towards Boo. So drag off from the red box, create event, and under the function we want to create a matching event. And for this, I'm just going to call it detect play. Obviously it's gone all the way down there, so if you scroll back over to where the timer is, and then under the drop down, just underneath where it says signature, if you click the drop down here, click detect player, hit compile, then that'll hook that up straight away. As soon as it begins event play, it'll fire the sequence off, set it to the idle state, but it'll also have this timer running every half second. And then finally, from the return value for the timer, I'm going to promote that to a variable, and we're going to use this as the handle to detect player. So detect player handle compile save, and that's pretty much the last thing we need to do for this part. So this will be part 1, that's part 1 finished, and in part 2 what we're going to do is we're going to code from this detect player algorithm. So I will see you in the next part.